And time to begin our work session. Welcome everyone. We read this before each work session. To clarify, this is a monthly work session of the Mayor and Council. This is a meeting that is held each month to allow the members to discuss specific items in preparation for the regular council meeting, which is held the second Tuesday of each month. The dialogue of this meeting will be between the mayor, council, and staff members. The time for citizens' involvement will come at the regular meeting to be held next Tuesday during the citizen input portion of the meeting. We respectfully ask that you hold your comments and questions until that time, unless called upon. Having said that, item number 1, discuss recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Commission by a 5-0 vote for the plan of services for the annexation of property unaddressed on Webb Road, approximately 31 acres, map 062, parcel 045.00 in book 890, page 2192. Owner Cameron Coble and William H. Coble Jr. Richard.
Yeah, so what we have here is the plan of services for the annexation you're going to be considering at the regular meeting. So this is typical plan of services modeled after the other ones that you've seen before you before. A couple of things that I'm just going to point out to you that I've added to this are under water and sewer. I have a clause, a line in there that says if they're subdivided for water, for domestic consumption and fire protection, will follow water department policies and will be subject to any capacity limitations at the time of subdivision. You know, that's in the sewer portion and the water portion, and what that's hitting at is where we have this temporary suspension of water availability. You know, there's nothing in the discussions I've had with the sewer department, Lumen, but you know, depending on how long this sits out there undeveloped, something could always come up. So I'm just making sure the plan to serve the area has that in there, that they're subject to those limitations if they exist when they get to the subdivision phase. Other than that, this reflects your typical plan of service that this body's seen before. One thing I'm gonna update and get to Gina, I just noticed under the electric, I have a mention of water, which though those two don't mix and shouldn't be there together, we'll get that resolved before y'all vote on it next week.
Any questions for Richard?
I do, Richard. So what we just saw, we came in here changed. So is that the only thing that changed, the water, the sewer, and you pointing out about the electric? Is that?
Yeah, and one thing that Leroy came and talked to me about that has changed that I forgot to mention is the gas available upon request. He requested that I change that available upon request and a board subject to board approval. So there's a little bit of a change there at Leroy's request. But other than that, they've remained to what you've seen in plans of services in the past.
And all this will be updated and get to us a few days before the next council meeting.
Yes, sir. I'll turn this around and have the typo corrected for Gina in the morning.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I have a question for Mr. Hutto. There's a question of whether or not there may be Native American artifacts and remains on this property, and I think it would be bad of us to not at least discuss it. My question is, as a property owner, if it's just artifacts, there's nothing to prevent the property owner from developing. If there are remains, then that stops everything in its tracks, right?
I believe so for almost any human remains, but especially Native American ones. I'd have to look at the specific statute on that to give you an answer.
Yeah, and I researched this a little bit because I got some comments at the Tennessee Department of Archaeology, I think is the state agency. So artifacts, just because artifacts are on the ground, wouldn't necessarily stop them from developing. If human remains are found, there's a process they have to follow, notify local law enforcement, the local coroner, and that would be for any human remains that are found on site. And then, of course, they're not going to be able to remove those without a chancery court order, is what's on the Department of Archaeology for the state of Tennessee's website as far as how that's handled.
Okay.
Further questions? Okay, Richard, you're still up. You're gonna be up for a while. Number 2, discuss recommendations by the Planning and Zoning Commission by a vote 4-0 for a plan of services for the annexation of property unaddressed Globe Road, approximately 61.02 acres, map 069, parcel 011.011.01 and 11.02 in book 374, page 508, owner Vera Cabasa. Richard?
And this is almost verbatim of the last plan of services. What changes here is I do update water line sizes. This does have the protection in there when they subdivide later on down the road that they're subject to any capacity limitations, just provide that protection. And this owner and I think there's a developer looking at it are aware of those limitations that are in place. I know there's been some discussion at Globe Road. If you look under streets, we're not adding any right of way at this point. So that's not a question here. And I did all 3 of these plan of services right there together, so the water typo's in this one as well. But we'll get that one resolved under the power.
Questions?
So the water in number 2's been changed, the sewer in number 3's been changed, and then the same gas has been changed, or will be changed.
Yes, sir.
Further questions? Item 3, discuss recommendations by the Planning and Zoning Commission by a 4-0 vote for a plan of services for the annexation of property unaddressed Globe Road, map 069, parcel 055.00 and 056.00 in book 890, page 2184, owner William Coble, Jr.
And this is in the same situation as the last plan of services. We have the protections in there for any capacity limitations that may exist. I've got to repair that typo, and again, there's no right of way in consideration for this annexation.
Questions? Okay, these will be on the agenda for Tuesday, and that's when the public has their opportunity to express themselves about the project.
I've got just one question.
Okay.
Is it fair to say that if we did not annex these properties, the county is likely to approve these projects in some form anyway? Is that the typical outcome?
So I wouldn't necessarily want to speak on the county's behalf. They are under the same temporary suspension that the city's under. Our water department serves a much broader area. That is being enforced. There's been at least one project in the county that I know of that the county was approached about, and the person that was doing the development was turned away. They would have some form of a development right in the county. I'm not familiar with their zoning ordinance to know, at what lot size that may occur. Just from kind of broadly knowing backgrounds of most county zoning ordinance, it would probably be a much larger lot size than would even be allowed under our R1. designation, but, you know, I hate to say yes, it would develop under the county because there are many other things that could potentially come into play. Septic system, you know, some sort of sewer treatment would potentially come into play with it as well, that would further restrict the way it could develop.
Any of them that did move forward though, because of mutual aid agreements, we would be likely to provide police and fire services without any tax revenue in return for those services.
That is my understanding, but I would defer to the city attorney to tell you that for sure.
Further questions?
I have a question. This is, we're not giving that, they won't give any right of way to the city. Why will they not be giving any right of ways to the city?
So at this point, this just doesn't take in Globe Road or, in the case of Webb Road, those existing right-of-ways. They're connected to the city through, all three annexations are connected to the city through other means. So, you know, we're not annexing an island here. You know, there was something that I brought up to Planning Commission, brought up to this body the first time. You know, we're considering a landowner's request in this case. That would be something we would do additional. If it was the will of this body, you would need to come back and look at annexing it separately at a later date at this point.
So not one time we talked about getting easements with the city right away.
If it's developed under the city specifications, it depends upon the road classification. And where it requires a wider right-of-way, but also under consideration is that any 100 homes or more that are built that comes onto a highway, they would have to require turn lanes at the owner's or the developer's expense.
So we don't need a right of way.
Well, if this depends on how it's classified. Like on Franklin Road, it's a major artery, so it requires an 80-foot right-of-way. So if that turns out the case, then they would have to, we'll have to check the classification. They would have to set their boundaries back so that there would be adequate right-of-way to meet those guidelines.
Because the way it's
Yep.
looking, everything's building there. So I just want to make sure the city's gonna have some right of way there. Right like that.
We'll, you're familiar with what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and what the mayor's discussing is there's a clause in the subdivision regulations, and it really applies to any road out there. You know, when we're doing a new city street, they have a right-of-way width. You know, in this case, there's a clause in the subregs where if you're dividing off of an existing street, depending on its classification, and I think this is a major collector. Don't quote me on that. It's been a few weeks since I looked at that map, but I think it's a major collector. They would have to dedicate additional right-of-way for their half from the center line based on what that road grade is. So at a collector, you know, if right now they have, say, 20 foot of right-of-way and they're supposed to, for their half of the road, because we're only talking about annexing off of one half, they have 20 foot, they would be responsible at a collector for, say, 60. They would have to dedicate that existing or additional 10 foot of right-of-way. So I can't, this is one where I haven't memorized all the numbers in the subdivision regs. I'm using that as an example. The number could be slightly different because I don't know the width of that right-of-way either. So we would get additional right-of-way later on in the process if needed. And then, you know, of course, that's gonna be in the city because you're annexing based on the boundary of the parcel.
So make sure we don't have to buy it.
Yes. Yeah.
So Webb Rd is not included in the annexation proposal.
No, sir, it's not.
Okay, cause I was on that road the other day, it's, somebody looks like they dumped asphalt up the road a little bit, so it's pretty rough up in there once you go up there toward the alley property, right about there. The second thing too, just to make sure, follow the Councilman Bradford, if the council, this body, turns the annexation down, it still would not prohibit anyone from going and developing the property. Correct?
That is correct.
That in itself would not stop.
Yeah, they would have, you know, a different set of development rights. It would just be under county jurisdiction.
And the annexation is not approval of development plans at that point. It's just simply bringing the lot as it is into the city.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's correct. It's bringing the property in as it exists today into the city limits. Any, you know, development, whether, you know, and whether it's residential or commercial, would, you know, come back before the planning commission for either a site plan or a plat review.
Further questions? Okay, thank you, Richard. I believe we'll let you sit down now. Item 4, discuss authorizing the use of ARPA funds towards group medical insurance, premium not to exceed $350,000 from July through September 2023, recommended by the Budget Committee. Debbie, are you going to present this?
Yes, sir.